Morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to Compass Christian Church. My name is Luke Davidson, and I'm the campus pastor here at the North Richland Hills campus. And what you saw a minute ago, the Scared to Death series promo, we're starting that next weekend. And it's a new series that we're doing to talk about the anxieties and the pressures and the things that really kind of overwhelm our lives. So it'll be a lot of fun, and I hope that you won't miss it. Today, we're closing out this series called Parental Guidance Required. And essentially, we've been looking at three primary relationships that are really important for all of us. We've been looking at our relationship with our parents and our parents' relationship with your child, your relationship with God, your child's relationship with God, and relationship with others. Because essentially, whether you're a parent or not, all of us find that we have been developed into who we became a lot by our experiences, our decisions, and our relationships. And isn't it the truth that sometimes those relationships in a massive way shape our experiences and shape our decisions? And so we think that if we could focus on these three relationships, that if you could focus on your relationship with your parents or your relationship with God, your relationship with other voices that can influence and speak into your life, and if you can focus on these relationships for your kids, we think it will accomplish a huge thing for our church and for your families and for our community. So we're focusing on these three relationships, and specifically parental guidance required. For parents, we're asking these three questions of these three relationships. What am I doing to advance my child's relationship with God? That's what we talked about last week. What am I doing to enhance my child's relationship with me, with their parent, with my child, right? And then, what am I doing to influence my child's relationship with others? Today, we're going to start with that second question. What am I doing to enhance my child's relationship with me? And basically, the principle that we're going to kind of work from today is basically saying the quality of your relationship with your children will ultimately determine the weight of your influence. They will reach a point in their lives where it's not just as simple as saying, hey, I'm mom, I'm dad, you have to do what I say, and that influence will work anymore. You have to get to a place, I think we all know this, where there is a relationship that is strong enough that that is what will correlate to the influence that you have in your child's life. So how good is your relationship with your child? Or are you developing and transitioning into a place of relationship instead of just being mom or dad? Because that will determine how good your influence is in the future. You might think that your own situation and how good your relationship is with your parents. If you don't have a very good relationship with your parents and they call you up and they start telling you stuff, and maybe you see their name on your phone and they call and you're like, I guess I have to answer. There's some guilt there. And it's like, or maybe they have something that you want. And it's like, okay, I'll make the phone call. Maybe, they're bribing me just to get time. That's not really the relationship. But the reverse is also true. If you have a great relationship, you see their name and you get excited. You think, I do want to hear from them. I do want to connect. So even with your parents, we know that this is the case. Think about your children and the way that they will see you and your relationship with them. The relationship is very, very important. Now, a couple weeks ago, Pastor Drew taught us that when it comes to a child's relationship with their parents, when your child is young, when you were young, the influence that your parents had over you and the influence that you have over your kids when they're young isn't so much dependent upon a relationship as it is your influence is dependent upon you as dad, as you as mom, as size and position. I've got the authority. I'm bigger. I'm mom. I'm dad. You have to do what I say. And it's good. That is proper. This is how you should raise the children when they're young. They need to know what's right and wrong. They need to know what the boundaries are. They need to know that there are consequences in these types of things. The problem is there comes a point where size and position don't matter as much anymore. I mean, it's been a long time since my mom picked me up and strapped me in a car seat. I could pick her up and strap her in a car seat more easily than she could. So size and position went away a long time ago. And if you're not careful, there's a pivotal stage or phase that begins to change as your kids get older. And you can read about this. I know all my kids are little, but if you talk to parents of teenagers and young adults, they'll say, yeah, there's this time where things begin to change. And if you do not quickly transition as a parent, while you still have the advantage of size and position, while you still have the advantage of I'm mom and I'm dad and you need to do what I say, while you still have the advantage of that authority, if you do not begin to quickly transition away from that and into a relationship and begin to parent and influence your kids from a relationship, then ultimately, long term, you will lose influence because you will erode the relationship between you and your son or your daughter. It's what we might call exasperating your son or your daughter, where you kind of lose the size and position. You're not bigger than them anymore. Maybe your son is, twice as tall as you are. But if you don't transition out of this, you keep parenting from size and position. You say, son, you want the car keys? You want to graduate? You better do what I say. If you parent like that for too long, past the phase where size and position are effective, you will lose influence and you will erode the relationship. We see this clearly in a verse like Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Maybe you've heard this before. It's addressed to fathers, but I think it applies to mothers too. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Exasperate. Do not exasperate. Other translations say, do not provoke your children to anger. The word exasperate, maybe we could just say, to exasperate a child, first off, if you are a kid, if you have a parent, if you once were a kid, you know what it's like to be exasperated by your mom or your dad. We all do. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, oh yeah, that was really frustrating. That angered me. It frustrated me. And we have to remind ourselves, oh yeah, that might be frustrating and aggravating my kids. It's where you parent from size and position and you really use your authority. I'm mom and I'm dad. You abuse it and it ends up frustrating and hurting and aggravating your kids. And it ends up not being effective. It doesn't do what you even want it to do. And it's kind of a situation when you exasperate your kids, there's no win for them. There's no way for them to win. They're frustrated. You kind of put them in a situation. You almost set them up. Have you ever set your kid up and you kind of reflect on it later? It's like, man, I led them into that trap and then they got aggravated and they punched their brother. But I kind of created a scenario. I exasperated them. I frustrated them. And if you do that long enough, you're going to begin to erode your relationship, which will lose influence in your life with your kids. To exasperate your children. Last fall, my oldest son, Jack Henry, played t-ball with I-9 Sports here in North Richland Hills. They played their games at Fort Worth Christian right down the street. Had a great experience. I loved it. Every Saturday, I got to go out there, and with that league, the parents, you get to go out on the field with your kids. And as they're throwing the ball, you get to throw with them. And as they're running the bases, you kind of coach them and tell them where to go. Playing t-ball because they don't know what they're doing. Throw it here. What am I doing? Everybody goes to the ball. Let's stay back. You're trying to coach them. It's a great experience. I loved it. One game, I talked to Kathleen about this. She remembers it very vividly. I think everybody that was there remembered it. There was a kid who didn't really know what he was doing. Most of the kids didn't know what they were doing, but it's kind of your job as a parent or a coach to go out and tell them what they're supposed to do. So there's this one kid who didn't really know what he was doing, and when he stepped up to bat, his hands were in the wrong position. His feet were in the wrong place, and he would swing and he would mess the ball. You know what his dad did? Instead of helping him, his dad said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I wanted to be like, he doesn't know what he's doing. And then he would hit the ball, and somebody else would come and hit. He'd run to the base, and then they would hit, and he would run to the wrong base. You know what his dad did? "Where are you going? Where are you going?" He doesn't know where he's going. And if you ever felt like that, I think that's being exasperated. Where you say, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do in order to make you happy. Maybe you live with somebody like this, or you work with somebody like this, where it's like, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, what can I do to make you happy? It seems like I can never win in this situation. And Paul says, if you parent like that, long after the time where your title as mom or dad is effective, you will lose your influence and you will erode your relationship with your kids. So instead of exasperating your children, he says, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. We talked about the training and instruction of the Lord, a child's relationship with God, last week. So if you missed that, make sure you go back and listen to it. I want to talk about that little phrase, bring them up. In Greek, this is one word, and it means to nourish, to cultivate, to develop, to speak into, to build up, to bring them up. It's a very relationally rich word. So that the goal maybe for parenting is not just to be right and to win and to force your kids to submit and obey. That's definitely something that's very important. You need to mold that when your kids are young. But as they get older, you have to start to say, okay, really my goal as a parent is to be a coach and to develop and to cultivate and to nourish and to build up so that they can thrive, so that they can really thrive in this environment that I am creating for them. So, whenever we think about our relationship with kids, the quality of your relationship will ultimately determine the weight of your influence. Don't grade yourself by the win all the time. Grade yourself by the depth of your relationship with your kids. If you have little bitty kids like me, I think that we should go ahead and start thinking about, okay, when in the future are we going to start to pivot or start to transition and move away from a place of, hey, I'm mom and dad and here's the rules and these types of things, and start to transition to a place that says, how can I coach? How can I encourage you? How can I help you make these big decisions yourself? If your kids are teenagers, you might need to get on this. And maybe you missed it and you're behind. You need to make up some ground. And maybe you're on the outside looking in. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But two basic things that you need in order to have a relationship with your child or with your mom or your dad, you know this. It's very simple, but really hard to implement, I know. One is your children have to feel accepted. They have to know that you accept them, that you love them unconditionally, that you are for them. And you know that you feel that way with your parents. You want your parents to make you feel accepted in order to have a really good relationship. The second thing, you can't get around this. They have to have your time. Not just some quality time, but a quantity of quality time. You just have to make it happen. Drew Brees was the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. A couple months ago, you remember they had a really frustrating game, lost in the playoffs, end of their season, to the Los Angeles Rams. And really, if you're a Saints fan, you say it was the referee's fault because there was a huge pass interference that was not called right at the end of the game that would have changed everything. And it's devastating. I guarantee you, any of those guys, especially the quarterback of the team, you work the whole year to try to develop and get to a point and try to win a Super Bowl, and then it's taken away on something that wasn't called that should have gone your way. Super frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating it is for them. The whole fan base is really frustrated by it. And I found out, though, right after the game, Drew Brees was on the field throwing football with his kids, and somebody even took a picture of him kneeling down and tying his son's shoe. I think we've got a picture of it. I just thought it was interesting that here is an individual who's been working hard, and I think all of us, if you had a frustrating thing and your kids were like, hey, Daddy, we want to play, you might, everybody could relate and say, hey, listen, I work hard for you guys. Do you understand the life that I've provided for you? I don't know that you appreciate what we have. I just need some space to myself right now because I don't know how many more chances I'm going to get to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Drew Brees is getting a little later in his career. How many more? He's not going to get many more chances at this. I love that instead of that mentality, Drew Brees is thinking, I don't know how many more chances I'm going to get to invest in my kids' lives. I don't know how long it's going to be before they're grown and out of the house and before I'm developing a relationship now that before too long, if I don't have that relationship, we might not be very connected and I might not have influence in their life. I love that he parents, and you can just see it right here. And I wonder if maybe there's a little bit of a difference where we need to say, you know what? Sometimes you just have to hear it and say, I got to prioritize. I have to make the time. I have to spend a quantity of quality time with my kids. Now, maybe you're in a scenario where this whole conversation, you're like, Luke, I wish we would have talked about this 5 years ago because it's 5 years too late. It's 10 years too late. I'm on the outside now. I don't have a relationship with my kids. I don't have any influence. What do we do? Well, I haven't been in your shoes, but if you talk to people who have and to psychologists, a couple things. First off, there's no guarantee that you get back in. That's kind of up to your adult children. But number two, maybe your best bet is to serve your way back in. And you say, you kidding? I served them for 18 years. I changed diapers. I drove them here and there. I know it's not fair, but you can't family tree your way back into this. It's not my mom and I'm dad and you better do you realize what I did for you and all this stuff? No, it's just not going to work. You serve your way back in and imitate Jesus, humbling himself, did not take upon himself the privilege of God, but instead humbled himself to serve and to sacrifice his life for men. No conditions, no qualifiers, just to serve. You know why you should do that? Just a selfish motivation for you? Because it'll be really hard for your kids. It's hard for anybody to keep a relational door closed on somebody who just wants to serve for no other reason than just to serve. It's hard to keep that relational door closed. And I think we all want to have a relationship with our kids because, let's be honest, that's kind of the reward of parenting, the reward of changing so many diapers and wiping up vomit and changing sheets and driving kids here and there and dealing with all of the drama and the changing. The reward is that one day when your kids are out of the house, you'll still have a relationship with them, and then you have grandkids. That's kind of the reward. I mean, I don't know if this is biblical as much as it's just selfish. I think we could all just say one day we want to have a relationship with our kids. That's kind of the goal of this, that when Christmas comes, they'll load up the car and they'll come to our house. Not because they have to, because of guilt. Not because I bribed them. Hey, I got a minivan, but you got to come get it, I think a lot of us could experience, the way that we feel with our parents is guilt and bribery. How do I stop feeling guilty? How do I get what they have? That doesn't seem like much of a relationship, but maybe the goal, I know it's not perfect, a perfect world, but if we could say, what's the selfish goal? A goal of parenting is that when our kids don't have to come home, that they want to come home, that they want to come and see Kathleen and I and spend time with us. I think that's a goal that we might have. And I think that that's a scenario that's not built so much on I'm dad, I'm mom, I'm authority, you need to respect me. It's built maybe, I think, more on a long time ago we successfully transitioned to a place that says, I'm not just mom, I'm not just dad, I'm for you, I'm with you, I want you to succeed, I can help you, and I know others that can help you too. I think that's a big deal. So, wherever you are on the parenting spectrum, if you're like me and you have really little kids, if you're not a parent but you expect to be a parent one day, if you're not a parent, you don't ever expect to be a parent, but you want to build a better relationship with your parents. Maybe you're a parent and you have teenagers, or you're a parent and you have adult children. Wherever you are on this spectrum, I think it's an important question to ask. What am I going to do today to enhance my child's relationship with me? Because you can serve your way back in, you can love, you can transition from being a mom, dad to being a coach. I'm not saying that you leave those titles behind, but you just start to shift and pivot and to do things a little differently from this point on into the future. What can I do to enhance my child's relationship with me? Now, Reggie Joyner did a lot of research. He's done a lot of research over the years on parenting, and he's got a lot of resources and books. His name's Reggie Joyner. And he did some research and found out the number of hours. Oh, goodness. That wasn't planned, but it's okay. Each of these ping pong balls represents about 40 hours, okay? So he found out that a parent has about 3,000 hours every single year to influence their children, intentionally or unintentionally, to influence their kids, okay? That about fills up that vase right there. Now, I think we all know that as parents, we have the most influence with our kids. We have the most time with them. They're in our houses. We're driving them around. We have the most influence. And so we have to take advantage of that and say, I'm going to pour into that. But interestingly enough, we were doing some counting this past week, and we thought about, what about coaches and teachers and student group leaders and house group leaders and friends and mentors and aunts and uncles? If you add that all up, it comes to about 1,000 hours. All right, so it's not as much as the parenting vase, but you can see there's still a pretty significant contribution here that others make in the time that the hours that they have in influencing our children, okay? So parents, you have the most time, but others have a significant amount of time influencing our kids as well. Interesting, because a lot of people put pressure on the church. Let's say that this third vase represents the church. And the church does play a very significant part in developing and understanding our kids and helping them to know what's right and wrong and who God is and that they have a relationship with God, and can help to establish some of these other relationships and can help to equip parents to influence their kids. But you know what? The trends, the statistics show that the average person only attends church. Those are people who attend. People who don't attend aren't even factored into this equation. But people who attend church actually only attend a little over once a month. So you'll have some people come in and say, hey, the church only ever talks about money, or we don't talk about Jesus enough, or why are we in a series where we're talking about movies from Hollywood? Well, we talked about a lot of stuff over the last month. You just haven't been here, so you chose some other stuff. It's cool. It's just a reality. Would have been helpful, but you chose something else. So the reality is, Reggie Joyner points out, the church really only has about 40 hours a year to invest in your child's life. That's all the time. So, not to discourage you, I think the church still plays a major role, but you have to take great pride in understanding your influence in your kids. But then think about this second vase and the potential of other voices that are speaking into your son or your daughter's life. Are you investing in other voices that will be influencing your kids' lives? That's the third question we're going to ask today. What do I do? What am I doing to, can we throw that up on the screen? The third question, I think. Yeah, what am I going to do to influence my child's relationship with others? What am I going to do to influence my child's relationship with others? I think that we could all go back in our lives and think about some of the biggest mistakes and the biggest regrets that we made, and it might have something to do with the people that were dialed into our life. And then some of the best things that happened also might have to do with some of the people who were dialed into our life. And maybe we would go back and say, as a parent, I kind of wish my parents had dialed in a little bit more time with Grandma and Grandpa. Can my grandparents in the room say amen? That wasn't loud enough if y'all really want that. Maybe you as a parent say, my mom and dad probably should have dialed out the girl next door a little bit. She needed to be dialed out of my life. Maybe there was a friend or a mentor that they were really helpful. I wish that they could be dialed more into my life. This types of things right here, okay? Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20 is a great example of this whole process. It says, the one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. It's just a fact of life. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be influencing others for the gospel and representing Jesus. But if your kids are young and impressionable and influential, who is surrounding them? A companion of fools will suffer harm. Who are you dialing in to your kids' lives? Two questions that we need to ask. Who are you dialing in? Who's somebody that you need to dial in? And who's somebody that you need to dial out? And are you paying attention to the potential that you have here to dial certain influences into your kids' lives and to dial certain influences out of your kids' lives? Where I grew up is Louisville, Kentucky, and it's a south side of Louisville, a little area called Fairdale. I love where I'm from, and I had a great upbringing. It's a little rougher area. It just is. It's got some grit. If I was there, they make fun of my outfit and stuff like that. When Kathleen would drive into town, people would look at her strange and make comments. Like, this just happened. And I'm not trying to say, it wasn't really crazy bad, but just to show you the grit a little bit, like my next door neighbor's grandson got caught cooking meth in the barn out back. I'm just saying it happened. It's just a reality, okay? That's the truth. I'm not making that up. But I had a lot of friends growing up from the neighborhood and everything. We played basketball together. We played baseball, clubs, a lot of things that we did. But my dad was not only the minister at our church, he also taught music in the public schools. And his school was downtown. And so as I got older, I started going to his school downtown. And whether he meant to or not, it started to dial in certain influences into my life that naturally replaced what could have potentially been negative influences. And I'll give you an example of this. About 5 or 6 years later, I really hadn't seen those group of friends that I grew up with very much at all. And I remember one day I was in high school, I was playing basketball on the courts down in front of Fairdale High School, and it was surreal. It was like all of my friends that I had grown up with pulled up in like 4 cars, and there were a bunch of other guys that I'd never seen before with them. And it was like a movie. I'm not making this up. When they opened the doors of the car, smoke started billowing out. They were all super high, and they were out of it, and they were treating me weird, and I felt like they were trying to impress their friends, their new friends, and act like I was a punk. I don't know what was going on. It was weird. It really put me off. I didn't like it, and it frustrated me. And I think that day, maybe for the first time, I really started to appreciate how my parents had adjusted the dial of relationships and voices of others in my life. And I honestly, maybe my parents just totally tricked me, and hats off to them, but I don't think my parents dialed those relationships out as much as they dialed other certain relationships in. And those relationships just naturally replaced some of the other influences in my life. And I think you have to be intentional in saying, are you adjusting the dials? Are you thinking about the other people that are speaking into your kids' lives? Are you thinking about how much time your kids are spending with a certain teacher? Are they building them up? Are they nurturing them? Are they developing them? Are they nourishing or not? How can you influence that teacher to become somebody who influences your kids and says the things that they need to hear, the same things that you would say? A coach, you don't understand how much good a coach can do for a kid and how much damage a coach can do. What coaches need to be dialed in and what coaches need to be dialed out? What mentors, student group leaders, is there an aunt or an uncle that needs to be dialed into their life? Let's say that an aunt or an uncle spends 2 hours a month with their kid. That's 24 hours a year. What are you doing to dial certain people in? And maybe certain people need to be dialed out as well. There was a video that ESPN tweeted out last week, and they tweeted it and said, everyone needs a friend like number 50. They were talking about a video of little kids' basketball game where number 50 was helping his friend score a basket. Take a look. I think everybody needs a friend like number 50. And if you're a parent, find those relationships, find those kids, and dial in those relationships, dial out other ones. Try to create a scenario where your kids have a lot of hours with certain people who can speak positively and influentially in their life. A relationally rich network of people who will help them through difficult times. Pastor Reggie Joyner, who did some of the research that I just talked about right here, he tells a story about when his son was in high school, junior year, and things were going difficult. Reggie has a lot of book smarts and even experience working in churches, developing and cultivating students and helping parents do that. But when he was in the situation, it became a lot more difficult, and he was wondering, how do I do this? How do I navigate this? And it kind of all came to a head one night. He was in his son's room, and they had just had a big argument. And he said to his son, I want you to tell me everything. I want you to tell me who was involved, and I want you to tell me right now. And his son said something that Reggie said was honestly very, very smart. His son said, Dad, I can't tell you everything because you make the rules. And in that moment, Reggie was really frustrated, and he went to his wife and he said, listen, if me being dad, if me being the one who makes the rules and who adjusts the dials in their life, if me being the person of authority is going to get in the way of me having a relationship with my son, then I don't want to do this anymore. He's really frustrated. And the next day he went into the church where he worked and talked to a friend who was also a pastor and told him the situation. And I thought it was kind of funny because his friend almost lightheartedly said, well, I didn't tell my dad everything either, did you? And Reggie was like, I guess you're right. I didn't. And I think in that moment, Reggie started to understand that he did not have an objective perspective when it came to his son. He was very close and emotional about the situation. And his son was saying, I need somebody who is objective, someone who's not dad, someone who's not in control of the dials, someone who doesn't make the rules, someone who just isn't going to punish me and these types of things. I need somebody that I can just be honest with, an objective perspective who could speak into my life. Reggie knew that from his years of working with students, but when it came to his own parenting, he realized that he had to make some adjustments there. So when he got back home, he said to his son, listen, if you can't talk to me, then who are the names of some people that you can talk to that we can both agree on? And almost immediately, his son started to list out names of different people, voices, teachers, Student group leaders, one of his group leaders was one of the key ones. Other friends, I think there was a family member, an uncle that he was like, I could talk to him. And as they were having this conversation and his son was listing out these names of people that he felt safe talking to, Reggie started to realize just how important it was that he had created a relationally rich situation for his kids. That when they got to a point where they needed to talk to somebody, they had other voices that they could talk to. They had other people who could listen and who would speak into their lives and say some of the very same things that he would say. He began to understand how important it was that from an early age, he had developed relationships and other adults who could get in his son's face and say the tough things to help him navigate the difficult situations and decisions that he had made. Now, that's still really tough because as a parent, to have your kids talking to somebody else, I can't imagine how difficult that is. I know that I'm going to have to deal with that one day, and it's going to be very frustrating. You can talk to them, but you can't talk to me. And then they come to you and say, hey, I was talking to them and they said this. And you're like, I've been telling you that for 16 years. Sometimes they have to hear it from somebody else. And then there's also the issue of your pride and your reputation. Are people going to think less of me as a person or as a parent? And they're going to know the skeletons in my closet a little bit. And I think in those moments, you have to decide and say to your kids, hey, listen, go and tell them everything. I trust that person. You tell them where I've dropped the ball. Tell them where you're angry at me. Because at that point, there's something more important than your reputation as a parent, and it's the future of your children. One of the reasons why we love to do ministry with children and with students is because we understand the potential of others and the relationships. If we can create programming and house groups and things where your children can build relationships with other adults who can speak into their lives, that's going to be so valuable to you and to them. It's really, really important. That's why we ask you to be here consistently, not just for you, but for your kids, and why we want to invest and make student ministry great. Now, right now, our student ministry is in a really significant transition. You might remember a couple months ago, I announced that we took a break from our student programming. And if you didn't know that, you might be wondering, well, where is it? Well, we're in transition right now. We are hiring a new student ministry coordinator, and so we canceled our Sunday morning programming, and we've been partnering with the Colleyville campus on a few events. The Color War is coming up. I hope you'll take advantage of that. But right now, we are looking real hard to hire our new student coordinator, and when we do, we're going to relaunch, and I'm really excited about the relaunch, and I want you to be a part of it. We will have programming on Sunday mornings. We will have midweek programming. We will have house groups, and I think those are some of the greatest relationships that you can build are in the house groups. But listen, I need your help. Maybe you're not a parent, and maybe you find yourself in this camp right here, and maybe God is stirring your heart, and you're thinking, you know what? I could be one of those voices, one of those influences that could speak into a kid's life as they're making some difficult decisions. Where am I going to go to school? Who am I going to date? How far is too far? Where am I going to go to college? Who am I going to marry? These voices right here. If you feel that on your heart, would you text me and let me know that you're interested in being one of those voices? You could just text students or I'm interested in student ministry or something like that. Text it to this number, 817-687-9760. You want to take a picture or snap a picture of that to text me later, whatever you want to do, I hope that you'll do that, because here's what I'd like to do. I'd love to create an even bigger team of voices of other people that we can start to ask the question, what would it look like for you to partner with us in student ministry? And then once we hire our new student coordinator, I'd love to group you all up together and to team up, and then we can relaunch stronger than ever before. Student ministry is really strong in our church across our campuses. It's gonna be really strong here too, and I'd love to have your help, okay? So if you're interested, text students to 817-687-9760. That'll come to me. And I'd love to start a conversation. You're not signing an oath saying, I'm going to be a student leader. No, that's not. But if you're interested, I'd love to have a conversation. Now, also, if you would like to help with children's programming on Sunday mornings, We would love to have your help. We launched a little over a year ago. We still have some volunteers that are serving almost every single Sunday. It's difficult for them to get a break and to get to worship. I don't want to burn them out. I need your help. If you used children's ministry, if you're using it actively now, consider getting into a rotation with other people and becoming one of these voices that gets to develop not just the parents, but you get to be another voice to develop and cultivate a child's life and nourish them. Maybe your kids are full grown and you took advantage of children's ministry for a long, long time yourself. You say, now I want to contribute. I want to give back. I'd love to have your help there, okay? So whether you text I'm interested in children's ministry or student ministry, whatever it is, just text me at 817-687-9760. I'd love to have a conversation about what it looks like for you to become one of these other voices, and other voices that will influence our kids' lives. Because, as Proverbs 13:20 says, the one who walks with the wise will become wise. In this series, we've talked about some vital relationships. I'm asking you as a parent to engage with your kids. How are your kids connecting with you? How are they connecting with God? How are they connecting with others? Just put your hands on the dial and start to adjust people in and out to enhance their relationship with God, to take the time to spend with your child, to develop them and to encourage them. It is so vital and important. You need to, through these adjustments, drive a relational stake so deep in your child's life that one day, not because they won't ever make mistakes if they have that relational anchor, not because they won't drift, they will drift and they will make mistakes, but when they do, they will have such a deep, strong relational anchor in their life that they can look back and know that there's a God who loves them, that they can look back and know that they have a place, a home that they can go to, that there's a network of other people who can speak into their life. They can look back on these relationships when the times get tough and know that there's an anchor, something that can hold them secure. It reminds me of one of the most popular stories in the Bible. It's a story of a son who left home on some really bad terms. And we call him the prodigal son. And if you've heard the story before, you know it's a powerful story. I wish we knew a little more details. I wish Jesus had told us the parenting style of the father. That would have been really helpful. But we don't know his parenting style. We know that the son left home on really bad terms. And he made a bunch of really bad decisions. I'm sure he didn't remember half of them. And he found himself in a place where he was totally broken, totally bankrupt. He's working on a pig farm, eating pig slop. That's his life. It's miserable. And at the bottom, at the lowest point of his life, as he's sitting in that pig pen, we get a glimpse into the relational depth of his relationship with his dad and the relational anchor that his dad had established in his life. Because it says as he was at that lowest moment in the pig pen that he came to his senses. And he thought about how good things were back at his dad's house and the kind of man that his dad was. And so he went home, just hoping maybe my dad will just let me live there. It'll be better than this. And when he gets there, his dad opens up his arms and welcomes him. You know what his dad didn't say? Hey, where you been? What have you been doing? What are you thinking? Where are you going with your life? Because you know what he would have said? I don't know where I'm going. And I don't know where I've been. I don't know what I'm doing. No, his dad just welcomed him with open arms, threw a party, put the family ring back on his hand and said, you're a fully member of our family, and accepted his son. Maybe our prayer as parents doesn't need to be so much that our kids don't make a mistake and don't drift. Maybe our prayer needs to be when they make mistake and when they drift, help us to have made such good decisions and to have had the wisdom to have driven such a deep relational stake, a deep relational anchor in our children's lives that when they drift and when they make those mistakes, they can look back and know that there's a God who loves them unconditionally, regardless of how they've made a mistake. That they will have a mom or a dad. They know that there's a home that they can go to and they can nourish themselves and recoup and refresh. That they'll have a network of friends relationally that is so strong that can help them and give them the advice and the help that they need when they need it the most. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for parents. And I ask that you would equip us as parents to be aware of adjusting these dials in our kids' lives. I want to pray, Lord, for a parent that's here today that has young children. And I pray that you'd help us to have the foresight to look ahead and to think about, okay, setting good boundaries and parameters now. What is that point in the future where I need to transition? I pray for the parent that's here right now that has teenagers or young adults, and it's in that moment, and maybe things have been strained. I pray that you give them favor to begin to parent from a place of relationship, and that you might provide some other voices that could speak into their son or daughter's life. And I want to pray for the parent who feels like they're on the outside and they don't have a relationship and they don't have influence in their kids' lives anymore. I just pray that you'd give them favor, and by your grace, that they might be able to mimic the sacrifice and servant-heartedness of our Lord Jesus Christ and serve their kids, and that might begin to rediscover a relationship for them. And Lord, I pray for whoever's here today that might feel like they relate more to the prodigal son than anybody else and feel like they've totally wandered off and disgraced your name and the name of their family and abandoned all the things that they once held dear. And I just pray that even now, Holy Spirit, would you just nourish them? Would you build them up? Would you let them know that they're accepted, maybe through the ministry of this church, and that they're loved? We pray all of this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you guys so much.